We have a great agenda in front of us, and so now it's time to kick us off with the star of the show, which is Bozoma St. John. If you don't know Bozoma St. John, you're going to find out about her because she is an extraordinary and unique individual. She is a trailblazing executive with more than 20 years of experience across an array of industries, whether it's CPG at PepsiCo, automotive at Uber, at Apple, where she was a kingpin to be able to bring that whole entertainment sector to a new level of greatness and put Apple really on the map. And now she's the Chief Marketing Officer for Endeavor. She's won a host of awards. In 2016, she was named by Billboard as the Executive of the Year, and by Fast Company, she was noted as among the 100 most creative executives in our industry. Bozoma does so much for our industry, and she does so much for philanthropy and for great causes and for wonderful things that terrific executives, in fact, do. They give back. As Mark Pritchett said, be a force for good and a force for growth. And she's both of those. Among her greatest accomplishments, she's noted, she's got a 9-year-old daughter, and that is the top of the class for her accomplishments in this world. So ladies and gentlemen, let's kick things off. Please welcome to the stage, Bozoma St. John.
Okay. Did you not see all this walk out here? Hello? How are you doing? All right. Good morning. Good to see you. So I've been described as a force of nature in fierce stilettos. So I kind of felt like I had to show up like that this morning. What do you think? Yeah? Okay. Yeah, some of you think so. Some of you are like, you could have done better. It's totally fine. Next time you see me, I'll be like in a total clown outfit. It'll be fine. But I am really glad to be here this morning. I'll be in a conversation in a few minutes, but right now I wanted to take a little bit of time to talk to you about some of the things that are on my heart. You know, as a accomplished businesswoman, yes, I do self-describe that way. There are many times in which I show up as my full self, and sometimes that is applauded, like you did this morning, and sometimes it's seen as like, right? Now, for me, that means a couple of things, and that's what I want to talk to you about here today. Because a lot of times when we show up as our full selves, we want to make sure that our environments are not only diverse, but also inclusive. Inclusive of all different types of people who have diverse backgrounds, who have diverse interests, who come up showing up on a Monday morning in tulle because they can. But it's really important for us to embrace not just diversity, but inclusion. You know, the great Mahatma Gandhi said, I want to be the change. I want to be the change. That's what I want to be. I want to be the change. So we talk about it all the time. You know, what does diversity and inclusion look like? What does it feel like? How can we do that in our companies, on our teams, in our own work every single day? Well, it starts with us. You know, we have to look at ourselves as the representation. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be a black woman in tulle wearing fabulous heels. Or you could try if you want to. I mean, that's totally fine. But what does that mean for you? How many of you in here think you have a great resume? Okay, 2 of you think you have a great resume. My God. That is a disaster. In fact, maybe we should cut this short. We should just focus on your resumes. Okay, well, how many of you think you have a great story, like a great personal life story? Okay, more people. Good. Well, argue that 100% of us have a great personal story. That something has happened along the way that has brought us to this wonderful room here this morning that is unique, that is actually quite miraculous. Now, if you take a look at your own story and see the things that have happened along your way that have landed you here, they are unique. They are special. It's only happened to you. How do you bring that to your work? How do you bring that to your office? How do you bring that to the interactions you have every day? I've often heard it said, when I enter my office, I leave myself at the door. I challenge that notion. In fact, I hate that notion. Yes, I'll use that strong word, hate. I hate it. Because that means that we're never our full selves. So if we're not our full selves, how then can we have an inclusive and diverse environment? This is a hot button item. It's a topic that many people are talking about constantly. And so if we're really going to be action-oriented about it, this is not about the other. It's not about people who are outside. This is about us. You as an individual who has a unique story, a unique experience. How are you bringing that fullness of yourself into everything that you do? As a marketer, I think it's really important to understand how my own personal story contributes to the work that I do. And I'm sure many of you in here feel this way. We take a look at our work, we think, well, will the masses like this? When you're reviewing work or you're reviewing a strategy, will this appeal to the largest group of people possible? I also challenge that notion. Does it appeal to you? My teams will tell you that I often say, focus group of one, which gets on everyone's nerves. But I like that thought because I think, well, does it touch me? Do I feel it? Am I moved by it? Am I convinced by it? If the answer is no, then we have to keep iterating. We have to keep moving. Because honestly, how are we going to be able to touch and affect anyone else if we're not moved? If we make the decisions or the strategies or the campaigns or the work that we produce so plain that it doesn't even affect you, how do you expect it to affect the world? I use every possible piece of work. I think of it as like my greatest work. Maybe that sounds a little funny, but I do. Even the small things, which again, sometimes annoys people, but that's fine. Because my point is, I want every single thing that I do to have my imprint, to feel like I did something great, that I contributed in a passionate, energetic, impactful way on the work. And that only happens if I'm bringing the fullness of myself. So I'll tell you a little bit about myself, the stuff that's not on my resume. My parents are originally from Ghana, which is in West Africa. I lived a lot of places when I was a kid. Originally born here in the US, but my parents moved around quite a bit. We finally landed in Colorado Springs, Colorado, straight from Ghana when I was about 12. It was a really scary thing because I was almost this tall. Yeah, I looked like a tumbleweed actually. You ever seen a tumbleweed? It was like, it would just blow and just, like somebody didn't wear a tool. But it was a really scary moment because here I was so very different from my classic, American colleagues, well, at that time, classmates, colleagues now. But for me, part of the challenge was that I needed to find ways to connect, right? And oftentimes, we certainly can look at our workspaces or our lives now and think of the ways that we connect to people. Of course, as a 12-year-old, I was not thinking this strategically. In hindsight, though, I think of it and I can recognize the power of being able to figure out what are the ways that I can connect with people that is the most human. The ways that will make sure that they don't see me as this strange person who is an alien. Well, because I mean, you're 12, you kind of look like an alien, but you don't want to be treated like an alien, right? But it has really been a really fascinating way for me to think about how to connect with people now. You know, now I walk into rooms and oftentimes, yes, I am one of few. But I look back to those days and think, there were things about music, about sports, about fashion, about pop culture, all kinds of topics, food, weather, anything that I could find to connect. And today I do the same thing. So when I think about bringing the fullness of myself to my work, to my office, I think about all of the experiences that have led me up to this point. What are the things that excite me? What are the things that impact me? What are the things that make me want to do better in the world? Because that's what we all want. And how can I communicate that to a large audience? And so even as I sit down with Bonin in a few minutes to talk more about what I do as a marketer, and perhaps there are some lessons from my own experience or things that we're talking about here today that can impact what you do, I want to challenge you with the thought of bringing the fullness of yourself, the whole self, to your environment and to your work. And therefore, being able to see the fullness of someone else in that space. Because once you start to do it, you'll be able to appreciate others who do it. Let's start to actually give ourselves the credit, validate our own experiences, validate our own stories. Because in so doing, we'll be able to do that for others. Do I have that as a promise from you? Yeah? Good. So with that, I'd like to welcome Bonin back onto the stage. Now, he was so excited this morning. I was like, ooh, I need more coffee because he's on fire. But I would love to have a conversation with Bonin to get more into the topics that we're about to talk about now. So Bonin?
Wow.
Thank you.
Beyond the resume.
I mean, beyond the resume.
How are you?
Yes, hello. Thank
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Okay.
I don't know if my skirt can't fit on this chair. Just FYI.
Your skirt can fit anywhere. It's pretty spectacular,
Thank
by
you,
the way. So first of all, thank you for being here. But can you tell us a little bit about your road to today?
Yeah.
First job, favorite music artist, like what makes you tick?
Yeah, well, it's funny because when I think about my journey, and I began part of this conversation with talking about not just the resume, but the personal journey, right? I feel that those things are all intertwined and connected. My first job was out of college. I went to Wesleyan University in Middletown, Connecticut. And because of my wonderfully amazing immigrant parents, who I really can't talk too badly about here because my mom is sitting over there.
Oh,
so
let's give it up for Mom.
So I'll try to keep the, because usually I make fun of them, but I'll try not to do that now. But they were, very much concerned with making sure that I had, the right education, right? Doctor, lawyer, engineer, those were the three careers that were probably most important. And I was good at the sciences and math, and so I was pre-med. Now, graduating from Wesleyan, I had full intention, well, somewhat, maybe on paper, of going to medical school. But I knew that I wanted to do something else. And so I took a flying leap of faith and moved to New York City and took some temp jobs. I ended up landing at Spike Lee's advertising agency, Spike DDB, which was a joint venture with DDB. And it was an incredible experience, because it opened my mind to advertising, marketing, what it meant to utilize pop culture and find ways to connect to brands. And that was really the launch pad.
Nice. And then you go to Pepsi from there?
Yes. So, interestingly enough, I met Beyonce at that time. I mean, Beyonce's she's just the queen, you know? I mean, right? It's a good person to have on your resume.
100%. Or in your speed dial.
Exactly. Well, it was interesting because when I was at Spike, she had been part of a show on MTV called Carmen, the Hip Opera. I don't know if anybody in here remembers that. It was on MTV. I think it was panned by the critics, but I thought she was phenomenal in it. And at the time, we were working on a Pepsi pitch that was about, bringing a new sort of, new blood into the family of pop stars, right? Beyonce at that time, of course, now we look back and we're like, oh, Beyonce is amazing. Well, at the time, she was just coming out of Destiny's Child, and everyone said she would never make it, right? And I really adored the role. And so when Spike asked around the office, and, credit to him, he asked the young people who they were interested in or what was most exciting, I said her. And I mentioned this film. He watched it, and eventually an adaptation of it was turned into the commercial for Pepsi. So that also then launched this next phase of my career, because at that point, Pepsi then offered me a job to come and work on all things pop culture there.
Nice.
Yeah.
We worked together at Pepsi.
Yes.
What was that experience like?
It was complicated for me. I feel like there was it was a turning point in what now we call consumer engagement. In that at the time,
that group, right?
Yes,
I think there was a group.
Yeah, there wasn't. Yes, we launched that group because there really wasn't that understanding. At the time, you had traditional brand management, right? And so if you worked on Pepsi or Diet Pepsi or Aquafina, Mountain Dew, any of the brands, you were responsible, right, for up and down marketing around that. But consumer engagement, which meant, working with the NFL on, Super Bowl halftime show, or with any of the music artists on tours, or creating, touch events at South by Southwest. All of those things were new concepts. And so we launched that as a focus. And so the last years of my tenure at Pepsi, I headed up the music and entertainment group, which was responsible for making sure that all those things came to life. And in fact, that was my 5th deal with Beyonce, was the last one I did at Pepsi for her Super Bowl halftime show.
Apple. So what's that like? You did this memorable keynote that everybody talks about. I was, just so happy to see that. Like, what's that experience like?
Well, so here's the real truth. I was scared. Really, I wanted to just curse just now, but again, also my daughter is sitting over there, so I can't curse either.
Oh, let's give it up for the daughter.
Yeah.
I love that.
But I was really terrified. I mean, the Apple keynote stage is a really terrifying one. Not just because of course, the size of the audience, but also because, you're demonstrating new technology. Everyone is watching. Everyone is very critical. Probably, I don't know, maybe counter to popular belief, there is no backup. The device you're holding and that you are working on is live. There's no pretense. If it goes down or you push the wrong button, everyone sees. And so I was certain that how I wanted to present Apple Music, which was the new interface that we had developed, needed to be more personal. It couldn't just be about the algorithm, of the service. That music is an emotional platform. That yes, of course, you want to have the best tech in the world, but we're talking about music. People turn on music to feel better, to get hyped up, to calm down. People listen to music and it reminds them of some other thing that has happened in their life. And so I felt that I needed to talk from an emotional space, which was outside of the rules of how to present.
Apple's never seen that before? What?
And also, I didn't want to look like everyone else. I mean, I don't look like everyone else anyway. I couldn't really show up, as a white man that day. But that's no shade. It's just true. By the way, it's like I cannot. So
You're in Hollywood now. They have good makeup artists. You might be able to pull it off.
maybe I could have, but nah. I want to show up with my full black girl magic. You know, sprinkle that all on the stage. So, yeah.
What I actually skipped Beats.
Oh yes.
So what was Beats like, even before Apple?
Yeah, so I went to Beats. It was a really difficult time in my life personally, you know, and this is part of the reason why I'm so adamant now about, you know, bringing your whole self. That there are things that happen to us personally that affect our work, and we shouldn't be afraid nor ashamed to bring that into the work. At the end of 2013, my husband passed away from cancer. He had been diagnosed only 6 months prior to that, and it was a devastating time. I mean, devastation is probably understating it. And I was at Pepsi at the time. You know, that year was the Beyonce year, and I was prepping for Bruno Mars the following year. And it was just, I was on a high, and who knew, you know, that something so traumatic could happen. I was not aware, you know, and after he passed away, I met Jimmy Iovine, who is a, you know, well-known music executive. He started Interscope Records, and he had built Beats Electronics with Dr. Dre, and he was working with Dre as well as Trent Reznor on creating a music streaming platform that was Beats Music, essentially, and they were building it. Well, they launched it about a month after my husband had died. By the way, I was in full grief. Like, I was not aware of anything that was going on in the world. But divine intervention, I met Jimmy about 3 months after, and he knew of me and the work that I'd done at Pepsi, and so he really wanted to figure out how to make the brand of Beats Music a big global brand, while also understanding that, you know, he needed a marketer who understood the connection to pop culture. And so when he was talking to me about it, and literally I was, you know, sitting in his living room, he's talking, and it's like, you know, it's like a wave. It's just going over my head, you know? I'm like, and I looked at him and I was like, man, listen, first of all, I'm like in the worst place possible. Like I'm grieving. I'm not at all interested in making any changes in my life. And also, I don't know anything about tech. You know, that part, you know? And he said probably one of the most profound things, you know, to me at that time. I don't even know if he knows that it was so profound to me at the time, but he said, you know, what grief does is it pulls you into the past. You know, you start thinking about things that you should have done, you could have done, all of the things, you think about the memories, you know, you're stuck. That's what grief does, you know? And what he was trying to do and what he was trying to build was something for the future. You know, a new way of listening, of consuming, of being. And while some might think that, wow, well, that sounds really, you know, maybe superficial. Like, why, you know, you're talking about work when you're, you know, this devastating thing. What was profound to me was that I truly needed something to inspire me, you know, to push me into the future, to make sure that I was pulling forward. I'm not at all apologetic about the fact that I really love my work, you know, and I love being a marketer. I really enjoy the narratives that we create, and I'm inspired by it. And so I was sitting there listening to him and thinking, well, I don't know a goddamn thing about what he's talking about, but that sounds right. You know, I want to be in the future. I want to live. I want to enjoy my life. I want to enjoy my work. And it was that drove me to quit my job and go to Beats Music. And then 3 months after I joined Beats Music, he came in and he was like, so we're being acquired by Apple. And I was like, oh, right. Like, I don't need any more change in my life, you know?
You didn't tell me that going into it.
Yeah, exactly. But it was really that was really a pivotal time in my life.
But I think it's an important point that you say we forget how amazing of an industry that we have a chance to work in. I mean, brands occupy a real place in people's lives.
Yes.
A new generation, taste of it, you know, or what Beats has been able to create a cultural movement that people can align behind. I think we forget how lucky we are to be doing it.
Yes, and that's why I'm so passionate about inserting ourselves into the narratives. You know, because we are human beings, and that's the way we connect. We connect over emotion and over shared experiences. And so we can't discount the things that have happened in our lives. You know, when I look at new strategies or I look at the work I'm doing, yes, I'm a mom, I'm a widow, I'm a sister, I'm a friend, you know, I'm a daughter, I'm so many.
I'm a black woman.
I'm a black woman, I'm a fashionista, you know, I like Tool. Like, all of those things contribute to the way that I do my work. And I don't think I would be as effective of a marketer if I discouraged any of that in my work.
Leave Apple, go to Uber.
Yes.
At a time when Uber needed somebody to really say, what are we doing here? Like, let's actually care about people again. What was that like?
Really? Is that a real question? Like, what was that like?
Okay, never mind.
No, kidding.
Okay.
No, it's a real question. Because, you know, but I do think that's actually an important point, right? Which is that I have had many moments in my life where folks have said, oh my goodness, why would you, leave your cushy job at Apple to jump into a firestorm like Uber? And my answer is simple, which is that because I'm Bose. And being Bose means all of the things that I just described to you, right? That all of the definitions of who I am are affected by our corporate environments. You know, that when I walk into an environment, I want to feel included, I want to feel safe, I want to feel like I can bring the best of my work to the office, I want to feel like those who are participating in the platform are encouraged. And so there was no other moment or no other company at the time where I felt like, wow, listen, there's a whole lot of wrong going on and I need to help make it right. You know, and so how do we do that? Well, we don't burn the thing down, you know, because to me it feels like if we say that that thing or that environment cannot change, then it means we are doomed. You know, nothing then can be changed. So for me, I'm like, yeah, let's get it right. You know, go in there, let's figure out how to make the culture better. Let's figure out how to make sure that women have an equal seat at the table. Let's make sure that people of color feel included in the conversation. If I don't do it, who's going to do it? And that really was, for me, more so than the work, it was about the culture and how to help make it better. So yeah, I went.
I know that organization well and the previous leadership pretty well. And in a random conversation, it's funny because for me, Uber stood for, look, I couldn't get a taxi cab in New York City.
Well,
the moment Uber came around, I was like, you got my business for life, dude.
Right.
So it's funny because, and they actually ran some ads early days around that, which was inclusion. And to see how far they moved away from that, which is blind.
Yeah. Well, but that's the thing is that it's a really interesting conversation, especially for marketers. You know, which is that how do you construct a narrative that is true to the brand ethos because it is part of what the brand actually does or what it stands for, right? Like being able to hail a ride regardless of who you are.
Handicap.
Everything. And how do you make sure that that narrative stays true? You know, that you're able to prove that time and time and time and time again. And that if you're not able to do that, then you have brand atrophy and probably destruction. You know, there's actually no better example that will put a battery in our backs than that as marketers.
When I saw the logo change, I was like, it might be a rough ride. But so you leave and you go to WME. I don't know if you remember when I did the fireside chat with Ari at Pepsi. He's a fascinating. The fact that all three brothers are spectacular. But what's that like now? What does that signal for your career?
So 2 months ago, actually, so recent, I made the move to Endeavor, which is the parent company. So housing, WME, yes, which is the largest talent agency in the world. IMG, which also represents sports and fashion, Miss Universe, UFC, which, Lord, I was at the fight on Saturday. And Endeavor Global Marketing, which represents a lot of different brands as well. But for me, the opportunity was so exciting because it feels like, everything pop culture, everything that we're talking about that impacts our, daily conversations is housed there. And also, what an incredible moment to be able to have lasting impact on some conversations that are really important. You know, when we talk about women's empowerment, especially in this very moment, with some things that have happened that are, you know, feel detrimental and feel like our voices are not being heard, I want to help impact that, you know? And even looking at a competition like Miss Universe, you know, which has faced a lot of criticism for some of the parts of the competition. Well, how do we evolve that conversation? How do we evolve that competition so that it is empowering? You know, because we forget that the women who are, you know, competing are smart. You know, they're not bimbos walking around in bikinis. You know, they're students, they are entrepreneurs, they are incredible women who are competing for scholarships. And so how do we change the narrative so that those women are empowered and feel empowered when they're out in the world, instead of having a narrative that does them such a disservice?
You're very inspirational to the community at large. But at the end of the day, I'm sure that it's teams that allow you to be able to. So how do you inspire the people that work for you? How do you create the culture inside the organization that allow for them to be as expansive thinkers as you are?
Yeah, well, that's just it. I so love my teams for the individuals that they are. You know, the fact that there are so many different types of people, and that again goes beyond diversity. It's about inclusion. You know, that, and I encourage them to truly bring their whole selves to the office, you know, into every idea.
I also think it's diversity of thought. So
yes.
We did a top 25 thing at Mondelez, and you had to take a test, and you could be 4 colors from that test. White was compassionate, none of us were that. Red was like operational. Blue was like executional, and yellow was creative. And I was literally the only yellow. And it made me realize that we don't even have thinkers that are in those rooms that are different. So I think that that's a huge thing. Speed round, favorite professional athlete?
Ooh, Serena Williams.
Favorite sport?
Football.
Okay. First pair of Nikes you ever owned?
Oh, Jordans.
Biggest consumer tech trend that you're excited about?
Ride sharing.
Well, in that case, number of Ubers that you take in a month?
Oh man, it's I don't know, like freaking 50.
All right. What, you know, they see all the things. What keeps you up at night?
Oh, what keeps me up at night? Well, I mean, this very moment we're in, you know, we've got to all power women. Like, we have got to get behind women. We've got to believe women. We've got to make sure women are, you know, and I'm not, you know, I see so many of, you know, of course, because social media is so powerful. I see a lot of women doing a lot of talking, a lot of supporting each other. I want to encourage the men in this room and outside of it to do the same. If you don't want to be part of them, then you're part of us. And so be with us.
Shameless plug, our portfolio is 50% women founders.
Amen. Let's give it up for the ladies.
Let's give it up for the ladies again. Yes, please. And let's give it up for Bose, please. Thank you, Idoma. You are fabulous as always. It is such a pleasure.